East Pakistan, Bangladesh. Is Bangladesh headed the Pakistan way? What's the reason for this turmoil in Bangladesh? We are seeing videos of mobs running amok, people marching inside the presidential palace, stealing food, exercising equipment, animals, and even the undergarments of the former president weren't spared. What is shocking is in recent decade Bangladesh's GDP grew larger than Pakistan's. Its per capita income as good as India's. Then why the dissatisfaction amongst the masses? What went wrong? In this video we'll understand Bangladesh's present through the lens of its past and the reasons for civil war-like situation, and also address the conspiracy theories surrounding it. But before we begin, we must understand smart people learn from their mistakes. Smart nations learn from the mistakes of other nations. Bangladesh has the good fortune of being independent twice. What it also has is the misfortune of being oppressed twice and separated thrice. What Bengal thinks today, India thinks tomorrow, was the saying of the 20th century. Seeing this intellectual prowess of the Bengalis, Lord Curzon, the then Viceroy of India, took out the most efficient page from the British Book of Operations: Divide and Rule. And in 1905, Bengal was divided on religious lines, creating a spark between Hindus and Muslims that still lasts till date. Then, in 1947, in a post-World War II era, a bankrupt Britain decided to leave the subcontinent, and in a last act of kindness towards the locals, the British sent for famed lawyer Cyril R. Ratcliffe to solve the geographical problems of demarcating the boundaries between the newly divided nations. The famous Viscount took the map of the subcontinent, took all the time in the world, through his attention to detail and meticulousness, created an arbitrary line, and the ungrateful Indians and Pakistanis still fight over it. And India and Bangladesh inherited one of the most complex borders with a labyrinth of enclaves and exclaves within enclaves and exclaves. But that's how East Bengal became East Pakistan. Things weren't always hunky-dory between East and West, but a cigar-smoking, wine-sipping Shia Muslim Jinnah imposed Islam on the majority Sunni Muslim population. Things took a dark turn when Urdu was forced upon Bengali-speaking East Pakistanis, who were always looked down upon by their Western peers. Often touted as the most charismatic leader of the Third World in the 20th century, Banga Bandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman became very popular in East Pakistan when he led the language movement. During the general elections held on 7th December 1970, his party won 167 seats out of 300. Sheikh Mujib was now the Prime Minister-elect for all of Pakistan. A few months later, West Pakistan imposed a martial law on the East, and thus began the darkest phases of its history. The peak of brutality came during the infamous Operation Searchlight. The Pakistani army massacred freedom fighters, and mass rape of women followed. This military-sanctioned madness went on for months. This led to a refugee crisis in India and was forced to act. The Mukti Bahini, to their credit, fought valiantly, but the intervention of the Indian Armed Forces led to the largest capitulation of an army since the Second World War. And finally, Bangladesh was born on 16th December 1971. After its independence, Bangladesh maintained cordial and cooperative relations with India until the ascent of Khaleda Zia to political throne. There was a slight dent in the relationship when all the credit for Bangladesh's liberation went to the Indian army. And even today, all the sacrifices of Mukti Bahini largely go ignored outside of Bangladesh. But two things changed on the fateful day of 15th August 1975, when Banga Bandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was shot and killed by Captain Bazlul Haq. Sheikh Mujib's entire family was killed except for one of his daughters, Sheikh Hasina. Sheikh Hasina became a political refugee in India, and many years later, upon her return to Bangladesh and subsequent presidency, she strengthened the nation's ties with India. Her reign saw increased trade with India, which was mutually beneficial. The list of her successes include a GDP larger than Pakistan, formerly West Pakistan, a per capita income higher than Pakistan, and subsequently a per capita income equal to that of India's, the big boy on the block. Perhaps the most astonishing feat was the peaceful resolution of the most complex international boundary. Fun fact, India shares its longest land border with Bangladesh. Since 15th December 1971, Pakistan has held a grudge against Bangladesh and especially against India. Some believe since that day, Pakistan, like a disgruntled ex, has been looking for a way to get back at them. Sources believe Western powers like UK and US have situationally, sometimes unconditionally, tried to help ISI and the Pakistani deep state. The merit to these speculations comes from the fact both Americans and British came to the aid of Pakistan during the Bangladesh Liberation War. Undeniably, they had to, as Pakistan was a part of SEATO and CENTO. Please comment if you'd like us to explain this in detail. Before we talk about what Bangladesh didn't learn from its neighbors, let's first explore the current state of affairs and troubles. A large section of Bangladesh population have seen Sheikh Hasina as becoming dictatorial and an autocrat. But the tipping point came when a few months ago the Supreme Court of Bangladesh reversed a previous decision, and reservation was again made available to the family of veterans of the 1971 war. This led to a series of protests which then turned violent, followed by curfews. But then Sheikh Hasina's fortunes turned when the army refused to follow orders. The news about a white man allegedly telling Sheikh Hasina to hand over St. Martin's Island is doing rounds on the internet. Taking this in with a grain of salt, it's highly likely the white man was one from the Five Eyes nations, and perhaps most likely from the CIA. Upon acceptance of Sheikh Hasina's tourist visa to India, there was a void in the PM's office. And whom did they call to fill the void? Sheikh Hasina's second arch nemesis. Enter Muhammad Yunus. The 84-year-old won a Nobel Peace Prize in 2006, US Presidential Medal for Freedom in 2009, US Congressional Medal in 2010. He has since been the chief advisor to the government, but geopolitical analysts consider him the de facto prime minister. The protesting English-speaking Bangladeshi students reminded everyone of the Maidan protests of 2014, maybe even the Arab Spring, a page right out of CIA's playbook. And coincidentally, a man against whom Sheikh Hasina's government filed 174 lawsuits, a man who won USA's congressional and presidential medals, was parachuted in to lead the government. Coincidence? Geopolitical experts would disagree. As per her own admission, Sheikh Hasina says she would have kept her position had she bent the knee to the US and given away the St. Martin Island. But for the sake of sovereignty of her nation, she didn't. And now USA and its lieutenant, UK, refused her visa. She's currently on asylum in India and promises to be back in Bangladesh soon. Smart people learn from their mistakes. Smart nations learn from the mistakes of other nations. So what did or didn't Bangladesh learn from its neighbors? During the 1960s and 70s, Islamic Republic of Pakistan was a moderate society doing well economically. Under the military dictator Zia-ul-Haq, the nation radicalized fast. Bangladesh seems to be on the same path. The radicalized students, protesting violently like street thugs, proceeded to even attack the statue of their founding father, Sheikh Mujib. In India in 1993, the Prime Minister VP Singh passed an act that gave reservation to other backward classes. It led to widespread protests and even self-immolation of students. But the Indian authorities and administration managed it, and the society has learned to live with it. Bangladesh could not manage it. Bangladesh's eastern neighbor, Myanmar, recently faced a coup and is under military junta. Sheikh Hasina couldn't foresee her own military commanders would refuse her orders. With radical Islam on the rise and an economy taking a nosedive, is Bangladesh headed the Pakistan way? Or is it on path to becoming East Pakistan.